All right, hi everybody. Thanks so much for coming to this session. This is the Developer's Guide to Promoting Your Work. This talk is probably a little different than most of the other amazing sessions here at NDC. Most of the other ones are going to talk about how to build something with new technologies or how to apply things to be more effective. This talk, what I hope to show you are some ways that you can be more successful with the things that you're already building. To take those things and show them to bigger groups of people and make them even better with that feedback. And get a clicker to work. So over the last 10 years of my career, I've stumbled and I've learned kind of through trial and error how to promote myself through the things that I wanted to do. And it didn't come easy to a developer like me. I'm not inherently this extroverted person, this persona that I've been able to develop. But being able to do it and learning that has completely transformed my career. And I think it can do the same for you. And I think this is really important because all of us, regardless of what you're doing and where you want to go, we're building a product right now. Whatever you want to be in the future, the startings of that are happening right now. You're building relationships with other people. You're building the connections that are going to grow into your next job, breaking into contracting, starting your own firm, getting a promotion, building a blog, launching a product, whatever it is that you want to go off and do. And that's all happening now. But one of the biggest fallacies that seem to happen in the developer community is that we all believe that if you just build something great, that it's just going to work, right? And that's not true. There's so many great tech examples of that not being true. Betamax. Clearly we all used Betamax instead of VHS tapes for the longest time. The difference is that you have to spend just as much time talking about the things you build as you did building them so that people know about the stuff that you're doing and how awesome it is. In my opinion, almost all great things have followed this same basic formula of how they've grown. They started with promoting their idea, and then they build a little bit of it. And then they spend a bunch more time promoting it, and then they build a little bit more, and then they promote it a whole bunch more. And developers tend to go step 2, step 4, step 6, and just keep building and building and building and never actually talking about it with other people. And so this presentation, I'm going to tell you 3 stories about me, about different phases in my career and how I learned to promote myself to accomplish my goals at the time. And hopefully I'm going to use some examples. You can apply these ideas to what you're doing and where you want to go. Related, this could also be a story about how the hair has moved from the top of my head down around to the bottom over the years. And so way back at the beginning, when all the hair was on the top, I used to work for a company, and I decided I wanted to become a consultant. Because at the time, I worked for a company called Big Corp. Does anybody else work for Big Corp? Big, tall building, boring name. I don't really know how they did. Millions of people working for them. This is what my office looked like. It was a cube farm, much like any other cube farm. Does anybody else's office look like? Does this what offices look like in the UK, or is this a US thing? You don't have these. All right. Well, so I hated this. It wasn't the cubicles themselves, but it was everything they represented. It was like a yearly performance review. Somebody who I barely knew evaluating whether or not I was doing a good job. And my only path to advancing my career really started to look like it was going into management. I couldn't find a technical path to doing better. And more, I was doing the same projects every year with just slightly different people in the chairs and a slightly different variation of the goals. And so I decided to break into consulting. And the great thing about consulting is you get to use lots of cool clip art pictures of people shaking hands and laughing, and it's just what consultants do. But before I could really be successful consulting, I needed to find clients. And so as an independent, how do I find people to hire me? And I thought the best way to do that was through professional speaking, was to come to user groups and conferences and talk about the topics that I was excited about and I was interested in, to try and show people, my prospective clients, that, hey, I know what I'm doing and I'm fun to work with and you should hire me. And so I didn't know what I was doing. Here's a picture of me at one of the very first conferences I did, which was a conference called Twin City Code Camp. And this was awful. I'm not going to show this to you, but it is out on YouTube if you want to go find it. And it was basically me for like 90 minutes in front of a computer, staring down at it, barely acknowledging that the audience existed, and like live coding some JavaScript and doing some stuff. In fact, I was so nervous before I used to go on stage that I would used to carry around a flask of bourbon. And like maybe 15 minutes before I was about to go on, Jacob, you shouldn't have known that. Maybe about 15 minutes before I was about to go on stage, I'd be like in the bathroom, like pulling back a few just to settle the nerves. And it works. I mean, you don't want to take too many sips because then you might slur on stage, but that helped me get over that initial anxiety to get up here and start talking. And the more I did it, the more comfortable I became doing it, and the more effective I was at communicating my ideas. So I leveled up, I got feedback, I watched my own videos and saw how terrible I was and tried to start fixing it. And you can grow through, like there's a ladder that you can climb through this professional speaking. Most communities have a very rich group of user groups that you can go and speak to. And they're all like looking for people. Like all of you could go back to wherever you are and whatever you do and probably be the featured speaker at your user group next month if you wanted to. And go out there and start getting this experience. And once you kind of like start improving yourself, you can quickly grow from a local user group to a local conference to a bigger conference and then come to NDC and it'd be awesome. And there's awesome feedback loops that happen if it's easier to get into other things. When you're doing this, one of the other things that I think is really important that a lot of first-time speakers don't do is that they don't reuse their talks. I reuse my talks, and here's why. The first time you deliver a talk is literally the worst time you will ever give it. Is the worst time. Your jokes are wrong, your topics are wrong, you're saying the wrong thing about the wrong topic. And you don't know that yet. You don't know that until you've given it a few times. Every time you give it, you get all of these subtle cues from the audience about what's resonating. And so as you give your talk, get feedback, change it, make it better. This particular talk, I think I've given about a dozen times. It's gone through 2 full rewrites where I've just completely scrapped everything and started from scratch. And it's considerably better than the first time I gave it. I've watched the first time I gave it. It was awful. Hopefully, it's not so awful this time, but you'll be the judge of that. Once you go to the conferences, I think it's a very important point to always stick around for the after party, because that's when great opportunities really happen. It's the people who made the best connection with you will find you at the after party, and you will make these deep connections, and you'll establish these friendships, which will be the building blocks of those next steps in your career. All of the greatest advancements I've ever had in career have come through a relationship that developed because we were drinking beer together at the after party. I can tell you lots of stories about that when we're not on camera later. So why does all this matter, Todd? I've probably just spent the last 5 minutes trying to convince you to do literally the most scary thing you can imagine about getting up on stage in front of other people. I know it's scary, but like I said at the beginning, you're all building a product right now. You're building yourself, you're thinking about your idea, you're building connections. And sometime, it will become time for you to try and sell that thing you're doing. When you're up on stage and you're talking to people, we're becoming friends in a way. Maybe not like lifelong, like go on vacation together every year friends, although maybe, I mean, you never know. But we're becoming friends in the way that I'm recognizing you. We're going to talk over the next 3 days. I'm going to follow you on Twitter and we'll have a chat. And you'll recognize me. You'll be like, oh, I saw Todd at NDC London. We did this thing. It was cool. And later, when you go off and launch something, and when I go off and launch something, we'll want each other to succeed. Because selling to your friends is easier than selling to strangers. We want our friends to succeed. Regardless of what you all go and do, the bigger the community you have around you, the more friends you have, the easier it's going to be for you to get your first client, your first 100 customers, your first 1,000 subscribers, whatever it is you want to do. So, because we're friends now, and friends help each other, let me help you. If you're looking to get into speaking, if you're looking to try this and don't know where to start, or you have an idea but you don't know how to turn it into a talk, send it to me and I'm happy to offer my advice. Take a picture of this. Here's how to get in touch with me. That's my real email address. Send me what you have and what you're scared about and what your questions are, and I'll get back to you. It might not be until next week when I fly home, but I will get back to you. And so seriously, if you'd like to take a picture of this, please do. That goes for everybody watching the videos at home. So then some of the hair started falling off my head and moving around. And so I want to tell you the second story. And this is a story about Todd the entrepreneur. So after I'd been consulting for a couple of years, I was doing a lot of JavaScript work. And what I started to realize is that a lot of times, JavaScript kind of sucks. And that it breaks in ways that I don't often expect. And so I was working for a client, and we needed to know how JavaScript was breaking. It was very important to that client. And so we built a little way to track the errors that were happening in our application. And it was kind of neat. And then I went on to another client, and they have the same problem. And so we built another error monitoring subsystem for that client. And I think I did that 3 or 4 times until finally it beat into my head that, hey, everybody needs this. Let's build it once. And so I partnered up with a couple of my other contractor friends, and we started a company called Track.js, which the point of it was this. So nights and weekends, we started working on this project to say, hey, what if we just built an error monitoring subsystem independent of any of the other projects in a way that could just drop in to any of the clients we were working with? And so over the 6 months, lots of nights and weekends, lots of bar nights, banging out code that we regretted the next day. We released Track.js, and the important realization was that nobody cared. We had invested thousands of hours of our lives into building this thing, and we released it expecting, oh, this is brilliant, everybody's going to need it, everybody's going to sign up day one. And nobody cared. Nobody cared at all. And so we're like, oh, well, we're just missing that next feature. If only we had X, this is going to work. And so we'd do it again, and we'd build that feature, and then launch, and nobody cared. And we do it again and again. And it took us probably 18 months to realize that my job in this company, for it to succeed, wasn't to just bang out the next feature. The thing I needed to do was all of the other things. You need to market your product. You need to figure out who is going to use this, and how do I describe their problem to them? How do I call them and let them know that this is a problem? How do I engage with these people? How do I tell people who are likely to want to use this how to use it and how it solves their problem? And then the people who are using it, how do I make sure that they're having a great time? And so I wasn't any of these things. I was a developer, and I didn't know where to begin. I had gotten pretty comfortable with talking about myself through public speaking and being an independent consultant. But now I needed to not talk about me. I needed to talk about this other thing. I needed to develop a brand, for lack of a better word, around this other entity called Track.js. And I had to figure out, who is this going to be? When I talk about Track.js, who is it? It's not me. It's kind of me, but it's not. It's a separate thing. And so I looked out, and I read a bunch of literature, and my favorite person talking about this on the internet was this character here named Fake Grimlock. Has anybody followed Fake Grimlock on Twitter? Has anybody ever heard of this person? It is at Fake Grimlock on Twitter. And it is a giant robot dinosaur from outer space that's here to make your startup awesome. And he talks in all capital letters, and he just drops out punctuation. And why? Because it's awesome. And he has a lot of really great ideas on the topic, and I encourage you to go look at it. But I'm going to bring out one particular one, which is this idea, this one of the first things he wrote about, which is minimum viable personality. It's not minimum viable product. It's what are the main things you need to do to identify your product, your blog, your brand, who you want to be. And so in order to develop your minimum viable personality, here's the quote, which I'm going to try and channel what I hear in my head when I read Fake Grimlock. Here's how I believe Fake Grimlock would sound. Most important step for build product is build product. Second most important step is build personality for product. No have personality, product boring. No one wants. All products kind of fall into the categories of, do you want to be the thing that people need but is kind of boring? Or do you want to be bacon? You want to be bacon. Develop a personality so that you're bacon. So the basic kind of mechanism of how to develop your minimum viable personality, according to Fake Grimlock, is you have to answer these 3 questions. Of 1, How do you want to change the world? What is the thing that you want to make better by your thing existing? Second, what do you stand for to make that happen? And then third, and this is the part a lot of people miss, is what do you hate? Because you come off as really fake if you're just generally positive all the time to all things. You have to be against something. And this kind of manifests yourself as your mission, your values, and your enemy. And so if you can define those three things, you can start. And so here's how I did that for Track.js, because I went through that exercise. So how did we want to change? Our kind of motto was, we saw a lot of really crappy websites on the internet with broken JavaScript and tried to book a flight and it didn't work, or I can't interact with Twitter because the button's broken if I do these key combinations, or whatever. So we wanted to see that happen less. We wanted to tell developers about when their stuff breaks. Second, what do we stand for? What is going to be different about us? Like, what is our priorities as a company? We always think that simple before powerful is kind of a gap in the developer community. A lot of tools try and jump to like super uber power tool that can do everything but has this archaic context to do it. And we didn't want to be one of those. We just want to be like, hey, we're going to tell you probably what's going on, but you probably can't dig in any further than that. But it works for 80% of the time. And what do we hate? We hate broken websites and cryptic JavaScript errors, to the point where we actually got in trouble because we used to like publicly shame on the internet people who had like JavaScript errors, which probably was not a good idea. It was not a good idea, but it was a manifestation of this is what we hate. And so with all of the advice I'm going to offer you today, iterate, because you're going to be wrong. This isn't like a definitive thing like a lot of programming. Like, you don't know that you're done. You don't know that you're right until you just start talking to people. And if people are bored, if people are uninterested, if people are offended, then you've gotten something kind of wrong and you need to reevaluate. So once you have a brand, you need to start building an audience. Figure out who you want to talk to. The important thing to remember about that is when you're building an audience, it's always about them. We are narcissistic animals that are more interested in ourselves than you. And that's okay. Everybody is. So when you're building something, you can't immediately expect people to care about you and what you do. You have to bring something to the table for them. So how do you build an audience? First, figure out who you want your audience to be. Who are the people that you want to talk to? You're not going to build something for everybody on the planet. If you're going to try and build something for everybody, you're going to fail because you're going to sell to nobody. Figure out who are the people who you want to be interested in. And then build stuff for them. Build things that are generally of value for them. Write blog posts about something that is valuable for them. Build a tech demo about how to do something. Build a sample application that does something interesting with your technology. Show things that are inherently valuable, independent of what you want to do. And then go and talk to them. They're not going to come to you. Go to the places where the people who you want in your audience are naturally congregating and talk to them there. Be part of their conferences, be part of their GitHub organizations, be part of their social networks. The example of that is this, right now. I know it's so meta. I have identified a good audience for the Track.js brand as the people who come to NDC London. And so I've built a presentation which I hope is going to help you all become more successful in your careers by showing you some of the things that I've learned along the way. And then I'm bringing it here and offering it to you with the hope that you'll become part of an audience that I want to grow together. This is a perfect example, and whatever you want to do, you can apply this same thing. Think of who you want to be in your circle and build something for them and go to their conference and talk to them. It gives you a great opportunity to meet people who can help you grow. Again, iterate. You're going to be wrong. You're going to go to the wrong events. You're going to build the wrong thing. It's okay. Learn from the experience and keep going. If you're lucky and you've built a brand and you have an audience and you're talking to the right people and they're interested, you might have a chance to give a pitch and say, great, I love it. Thank you so much. Tell me what you do. Now you have to answer and tell them what you do. And so how do you do that? To be effective at that, I think you need to do a couple of things. Is you only have a little bit of time to say, one, what do you do? Second, how am I better for it? Again, we care about ourselves. It's like, I don't care what you do. I really care, like, how am I going to be awesome after I have that thing? And then third, if they care about the first two, what's the next step? How do they get this thing? You're going to get rejected doing this. You're going to put yourself into this vulnerable situation where your blog, yourself, your product, your whatever, you've just laid it out on the table for this other person, and they're just going to yawn and kind of walk away and say, that's cool. See ya. It's going to happen a lot, and you need to be okay with it. But every one of those experiences teaches you something. It teaches you that either you're selling the wrong thing, or it's the wrong person, or you did it in the wrong way. And you don't necessarily know which of those things is wrong, but you have a chance to figure that out through trial and error. And so you're going to iterate. I want to show you an example of an early version of a Track.js elevator pitch that I recorded on video. I actually used to do this at earlier NDC events. So if you've seen me at previous NDC events and we've gone to the after party, you might have seen this particular demo at a bar that I used to give on my hand while holding a beer. So here it is.
Hey, I'm Todd from Track.js. This is my business card demo that describes what makes Track.js awesome. So this is a JavaScript error, right? E is undefined, scripts.js, line 1. It's terrible. JavaScript has not been good about giving us good error information. And it sucks if this is all you have to go with to fix a customer problem. But the first thing is knowing that it happened. Because these errors, they don't happen in your servers where you have great logging tools. No, they happen in your users' browsers, and probably crappy ones like IE9. So the first thing Track.js does for you is let you know that it happened. And we tell you interesting statistics, like 80% of your customers who are on IE9 are running into this particular error on a URL. But that's just a start, because I don't know where to begin debugging E is undefined. So Track.js is listening to events that happened before the error to give you better context. Track.js polyfills and records console and makes it safe to use in all browsers. The console allows you to log on your client-side app like you log on your server and record interesting events and state changes in your application. In this case, we know that when the user first loaded the page, your application started initializing the user form. A few seconds later, your customer began interacting with your app and entered 16 email characters into this input. Track.js records interesting metadata about these user actions, but we never record the actual values to protect user privacy. After entering the email, the customer clicked on this button, and this AJAX event began, going to /API/users. It lasted 3,500 milliseconds before coming back with a 500. And that was the last thing that happened before this error occurred, which indicates the error probably has something to do with handling the response. We package all this information up with other interesting context about the browser and application for your developers. And with it, they can reproduce the exact series of events that led a customer to a problem and fix it quick. So that's Track.js. We're protecting 1 trillion pages a month and making the web a better place. I'd love to help you too. Check us out at trackjs.com.
So there's a lot that's weird and awkward and not good in that. But it does cover those basic 3 things. It talks about what do we do? How are you better for it? Look at all this context that we can give you. And then third, these are literally printed on the back of my business cards, and so I can hand them. I made these with a company called Moo Business Cards, to let you print a different picture on the back of every card. And so I carved up a core part of our UI to be able to tell a story here. So in my pocket at any time, I have this set of cards, and I can just pull it out and tell this story at the bar while I was drinking. Now, it's a little long, and this recording is not great, and a lot that's, we iterated on and have made better since then. But this is an early version. Now, the fact that it's on business cards and there's actually a physical thing is kind of gimmicky, but I think it's cute gimmicky. It's not bad gimmicky. Because I think it's cute gimmicky because a lot of people have come up to me after the fact and said, that was awesome. That was I remember that for years afterwards, that you had that whole business card demo thing. And so gimmicks can be good. Gimmicks can make you rememberable. So if you're lucky enough that people are interested in what you do after your elevator pitch, they're going to want to learn more. They're going to come to your page to say, all right, tell me about this person. Tell me what they do. Tell me about what their software does. Tell me what they write about, whatever. And so I have some ideas around how to design a page to be effective at bringing those people in. Not like the CSS layout stuff, but more about how to actually convert people who might give you money into people who actually give you money. And so my ideas around that are, I think pages should be simple. I think the page should have an audience in mind of who do I want to talk to? What group of people do I want to land on this page? And once I have that group of people on this page, what do I want them to do? And I think these 2 topics is what I should spend all of my time designing a page around, is who are they and what do I want them to do? And so I want to give you an example of how I do that today with trackjs.com. So I'm actually going to just flip out and not show this. Okay, so here is our webpage. Now, the audience for this is people who might want to give me money. So people who I've talked to, they've come to our site. What do you think I want them to do?
Start a free trial.
I want them to start a free trial. I have a giant red button above the fold saying, hey, I really want you to click on me. And I'm trying to identify with them. I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. So I found this piece of stock photo of developers staring at a computer oh my God, what have we done? We're losing so much money. How are we going to fix this? Now, the thing that I did, I'm just particularly proud of this, is when I found this piece of stock photo, they were just developers concerned at a screen. And I turned them into JavaScript developers because I photoshopped in that sticker. And I can prove it because if I go to Track.js for Angular, they're Angular developers. But that's just me playing. All right, so I want them to sign up for free trial. So I'm trying to identify with them and give kind of a headline at the top. And then if they're not quite ready and they scroll, I'm trying to get them more proof that I want them to start a trial. So I tell them a little bit about the software and what it does and remind them about what our UI looks like if they haven't already seen it. I try and offer social proof. A lot of times, just talking to somebody isn't enough. You want to know, well, who else uses it? Are you, just a fly-by-night operation? How many other people actually use this thing? So some social proof, point out some other companies, give some quotes, blah, blah, blah. And then I pitch it again. I'm like, all right, I made my case. Please hit the red button and let's go. And then I offer one more bit of advice at the end. Is okay, a little bit more social proof. Hey, look at all these people who do it. But I know that my audience, I imagine a lot of your desired audiences, are developers. And a developer is going to be that number's moving awful fast. I'm pretty sure that's bullshit, Todd. I'm going to see how you do that, and I'm going to write you a nasty email. I'm going to pop open my console, I'm going to look at it, and look! Oh, we just left them a little note right there in the markup of oh, hey there, developer. As I'm sure you'd understand, it wouldn't be cool for us to just get a live session count every time some random person hits our website. So here's the equation that we're using to do it. We do it with a little bit of JavaScript. If you want the number, you can email us at hello@trackjs.com. And a lot of people look at this because I get at least one email a month of somebody who emails me dude, that was awesome. I want to know, and that was just cool. Because as developers, we're often as interested in how our things are built as the fact that they exist. I look at the sites of customers or of companies that I'm looking at working with and see how their page is built. And so we spend a lot of time actually leaving little notes and little things in our code of things that we think our customers are going to be interested in about how did we build something. We're developers, and so the markup of our code is just as much a representation of our brand as anything else. So again, iterate. I'm iterating the slide, iterate. You're going to be wrong. You're going to get things wrong. We've changed our website a number of times. We're in the process of changing it again now. But don't overdo it. This is specifically for the web developers in the room. We tend to build technology instead of just using what's already there. If you want to start a blog, your first step is not to write your own piece of blogging software, right? What's available will work for what you need to do, I promise. You do not need to reinvent everything you do to launch your website. You do not need to build new technologies and research the latest, greatest way of doing something. You are procrastinating the hard work by doing the fun work of tech. And I know that that's happening because I do that all the time. So now I want to move on to my third story here. And this is the story where basically all of the hair has moved all the way around, which is now. And this is a story about Todd, the producer. And so through my relationships with conferences, I spent a lot of time coming to conferences and hanging out with speakers and hanging out with attendees, and we'd have a great time, and then the conference would just end. And people would go all kinds of different directions, and you didn't know where anybody was, and some people would leave town, and Other people just wanted to hang out and tell jokes. And so Jacob and I, actually, this is the first time I think he's ever been in the talk when we've gotten to this part of it, but it was Jacob and I who had this idea to create PubConf. And PubConf is this idea that all of the best experiences from conferences happen in the hallway track. They happen when the relationships start building and we start tearing down those barriers. And so we wanted to create this place after the conference when everybody's at their peak of the conference high to just like take advantage of that. And like we're going to throw a party and we're going to tell developer jokes and it's going to be a great time. So we pull together a bunch of funny speakers to do 5-minute funny talks in a bar. We buy all the beer. We buy a bunch of food. We just kind of it's a good time. So now I want to talk about some of the actual mechanics of this. Now, I went through the same exercise, kind of developing the PubConf brand, developing the PubConf website, all those sort of things, but I'm not going to cover all those, although I will just kind of reiterate on the page design. What do you think this is the PubConf page, what do you think I want people to do on this page? But you can see that my design philosophy has fully carried on to the PubConf website. Like, I want you to do this one thing. Please do this one thing. But now I want to talk about the actual mechanics of growing PubConf after I've already have the brand and the audience and the pitch. I want to talk about marketing words, scary marketing words. I'm going to talk about the funnel. How many people have talked about the funnel where they work now? A few people. How many of it is just kind of like this hand-wavy thing that nobody really talks about, but it's just like the abstract thing that the marketers talk about? Or do you actually know about them? All right, a little bit. So the funnel is this core part of your software architecture. Yes, it is part of your software architecture. It is probably the most important flow in your software architecture. It is how you turn people who might give you money into people who will give you money. Without this part of the flow of your software architecture, your software will not make any money and it will go out of business and everybody will be fired and it will stop existing. Whether or not you've thought about this or not, it exists. The funnel is one or more steps that your user takes between when they first figure out who you are and when they give you money. This exists for all of you today. Whether or not you've thought about it is whether or not you have a chance to optimize it and make it better. Here's the funnel for PubConf. The PubConf, people land on our page. And there's 3 simple things that I'm trying to get people to do. One is I want them to look at who are our featured guests and what stupid, silly things are they talking about. And if they do that, I feel like they're much more likely to want to come and buy a ticket. Then they'll look at the tickets and see like the details of the event, where is it, when is it, how much are the tickets, that sort of thing. And then hopefully they buy a ticket and they become a customer. My funnel is probably way simpler than yours, but you all have one today of what are all the steps that you're asking your prospective customers to go through to give you money. So let's bring this back out. How do you know any of this works? This is part of your architecture and it exists in some abstract way. But how do you know if it works? You spent all the time defining your goals and defining your flow. How do you know if it's working or how to make it better or what to focus on? And so if this was a piece of software, you would do that through tests. You would write a test suite to know which parts are working and which parts are failing and that sort of thing. And so analytics is the test harness for your funnel. Analytics tools allow you to measure how effective each one of these steps are. The common mistake a lot of people make with analytics is they just throw Google Analytics on the page and they think they're done. They're like, oh, we have all the metrics we need, we're good to go. Too much data and unstructured data isn't valuable. You need to take your analytics and you need to tune them to what you think your funnel is. You should have reports that tell you how effective goal 1 is, how effective goal 2 is, how effective goal 3 is. And you use analytics to build those things for you. So you're going to build tests with analytics specific to your funnel. And how you do that will depend on what your funnel is and what tools you want to use. The thing that's different about these kind of tests versus, a red, green, passing, failing test that you might be used to is that this is the test results you get from analytics. And I don't know what this means. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this passing? It's very subjective, and it's open to your interpretation. So I'm going to show you some more real data. So again, here's PubConf's funnel. And over a particular time period, where the numbers just happen to round out particularly nicely, I had 1,000 people come to my event page. 196 of them came down to view speakers, 140 viewed tickets, and 118 bought tickets. Now that roughly translates to this conversion rate on every step of the way, right? 19% of people came down and viewed speakers. Of the people who were left, 71 viewed tickets and so on. Now, that means if I total it all through, the person who comes in the top to how many they come out the bottom, I have about 11.8% success rate if I just total all those up. These are my test results. It's now up to me to interpret these about whether or not they're passing and failing and where I want to invest time. I particularly think that 19% sucks, and I think I should do better. But I'm pretty happy with the other ones. And so recently, if you've been to the PubConf website before, you might have noticed it looks different now. We actually did a major rebuild maybe 3 weeks ago. These are numbers from before the rebuild, so I'm still gathering evidence to see whether or not it worked. But the rebuild was largely meant to address that number right there, is I wanted that 19% better. But the jury's still out on whether or not that worked. So let's get back out to the funnel itself. So we dump leads in the top. We have some percentage that's going to become customers, and then we're going to get money out the bottom. And so if we can figure out how to tune this thing just right, we could turn the funnel into like a machine that just prints out money for us. So to do that, we need to figure out what is it going to cost us to put a new lead into the top of the funnel. And so there's lots of ways to do that. What I talked about at the beginning were more organic ways of building relationships with people who are just going to come to your website because they're friends with you, they know who you are, that sort of thing. But you can also just buy leads through a process that we all know called advertising. The common method of paying for advertising on the internet today is cost per click. There's lots of other ways, but I'm oversimplifying for the sake of this example. So we can pay for new leads to come to the funnel by advertising in a cost per click way. And so for PubConf, the mechanism of advertising that I've found particularly effective is Twitter. Developers tend to use Twitter a lot, especially at conferences. And Twitter has great ways that I can target people who I think might be interested in. So before I throw a PubConf event, I build a set of ads for every one of the speakers that I have featured at the event. And then I broadcast it out to the region. So you might have seen ads if you follow any of our speakers, or you're a developer, if Twitter thinks that you're a developer between the ages of 18 and 65, and you're within a 50-mile radius of London, you probably saw a PubConf ad, maybe. And so I have a whole bunch of numbers. These are for an earlier event where I had built this all out. So I have ads for every speaker. So like I could, use this data in interesting ways. Like I could say, hey, I had this ad here for Lindsay Pageant, and I had another ad here for Damien, and 126 people liked Lindsay's ad, and 0 people liked Damien's ad. So clearly Damien's not good. Clearly. I have data evidence to prove this fact.
That is amazing.
I have data-driven evidence. But ultimately, what's important to me about this is my overall. What I care about is for every dollar I put in versus how many clicks I got, I paid $1.17 to get a click on my ad. That is the effectiveness of my advertising. And so that is the top of my funnel. I pay $1.17 to get a new lead into it, because a click means they landed on my website and they entered the top of the funnel. And now I have a chance to win them over. So we already learned from my analytics test that my funnel performs at 11.81%. And so if I just take those two numbers together, I can figure out that if that's my conversion rate and my cost per click, it costs me about $10 to acquire a customer. I can pay $10 and somebody buys a ticket to PubConf, on average. Now, this kind of starts to make sense of if I can be more effective with my advertising and pay less, or if I can make my funnel more effective, I can get customers cheaper. And that's how that starts to work out. So I have this all kind of put together. I pay $1.17 for that percentage to pay $10 to get a customer. But I don't know if that's good or not yet. Because I need to understand, what is a customer worth to me? What is a customer worth to your business? And that we use the term called lifetime value. It's not just what they pay you once, it's what are they going to pay you over the lifetime that they're with you. And that's going to be different, right? Like the lifetime value, if you have a blog, the lifetime value of a customer is going to be like probably really, really small. It's like a customer comes in, they might look at 3 pages. How much are you going to earn off of your advertising partners off of showing, 3 ads? A fraction of a penny. So you'll have a very, very low lifetime value. Whereas if you are an enterprise consultant, the lifetime value of a client could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so how much you're willing to spend to get a customer is going to depend a lot on what kind of business you're going to do. For PubConf, though, we're an event, and we cost about $30 a ticket. It goes up and down depending on the city we're in and how much beer costs, but it's about $30 a ticket. And based on prior data, if you've come to a PubConf event, there's a 50% chance you're going to come to it again. Like that I don't have to buy you through another ad. That I'm just going to send out an email and say, hey, we're coming back to London. And half of those people just buy a ticket right away. They're like, I loved it, I'm back. And so those two together mean I believe my lifetime value of a customer is about $45. Is they're going to give me the $30 once, and there's a 50% chance they're going to do it again. So I use this number when I think about that. So when you're thinking about the lifetime value of whatever you want to do, kind of a good rule of thumb that you need to keep in mind is that the cost to acquire a customer, that $10 that you pay to get a customer, needs to be a third or less of the lifetime value, right? And the reason for that is you can't pay all of the money that that customer is going to give you over their lifetime to get them, right? You need to earn some money to deliver the thing that you want to do. I have to actually, I have to buy the beer for PubConf. I can't just spend all of the money getting them to buy a ticket. And you obviously can't spend more because then you would be losing money faster than you're making it. So here's all of my numbers put together on the funnel. So I'm spending $1.17 to get $10 to acquire a customer, but I get $45 worth of value out of that. And so what that means, when I kind of transform this a little bit, is that PubConf is this marketing machine that allows me to put $10 in one side and buy $45 worth of beer on the other. And I can just keep doing this. The more money I put in, the more beer comes out the other side. And I think that just makes this a win for all of us. So these were the 3 stories I wanted to tell today about how I got into consulting, how I started a software business, and then how I started a user group event kind of thing. Kind of the big takeaways here are, 1, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is that if you're at all thinking about it, get into professional speaking. It opens up so many doors with whatever you want to do. You don't even need to know what you want to do 10 years from now. Professional speaking will be a way to enable you to be more effective when that happens. Second, build up your audience. Professional speaking is a way to do that, but you can also do it with blogs or just being more active on social networks or just going to the community groups in your area. Building up your audience is going to enable you to get more friends who are going to support you whenever you go off to launch your products. And then third, once you're ready, once there's actually money involved, measuring your funnel is critical to understand whether or not this thing you're doing is going to be sustainable and how to make it as big as it can possibly be. So this was the Developer's Guide to Promoting Themselves. Thanks you so much for coming. I'm going to be here all week. I'm down at the Track.js booth, but I'm happy to talk about whatever. Not so much on camera, but once I get off camera, I'm happy to share more detailed numbers about how I do other things. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great time. I'll be here afterwards to chat.